going to share a sad cautionary story, an archaeological morality tale about inadequate archaeological survey and its irreversible consequences. In case any of you don't know this already, I'm going to be talking about Comb Ridge. Comb Ridge is a knife-edged, serrated north-south monocline southwest of Blanding, west of Bluff. Separates Butler Wash on the east from Comb Wash on the west. It's the setting of the University of Colorado's Comb Ridge Heritage Initiative project, an archaeological survey conducted over the last 10 years under contract to BLM, resulting in the exposure of this sad story, among other things. Some decades back, a pair of archaeologists was dispatched by one of our state's leading universities to conduct an archaeological survey of a proposed highway realignment corridor through Butler Wash, Comb Ridge and Comb Wash, southwest of Blanding. That corridor passes through dense archaeological landscapes that would later be designated the Butler Wash National Archaeological District, and on the Comb Wash side, the Comb Wash Great House community. I'm not going to name names or institutions here because it's not really about self-righteous finger pointing. It's about a sort of lessons to be learned. We all know that the early 70s was not the highlight of quality data production in our profession. We were trying to figure out what the hell we were doing. And all of us who contributed to the data sets in the early 70s would hesitate, I think, to have our work held up in very critical examination. We're all unlikely to escape very unstained in a comparison of past inadequacy. So this is not a story about somebody doing bad work, really. It's a story about the consequences of inadequate work in the long term. There's no known report or documentation of the survey, that road survey, beyond the 15 one-page survey forms that they generated, whose dates indicate that a 7-mile stretch and 11 sites were examined on the Butler Wash site in one day, and the following day another several miles and 4 sites were documented in Comb Wash. The Comb Wash corridor received additional attention in the following year, but on the Butler Wash side, the 11 sites were never looked at again beyond the one-day attention that was given to them during the course of this survey. And no work was done on the large majority of those sites. No more attention given to them until our Comb Ridge Heritage Initiative project went back and tried to relocate them just to tighten up some site plots. The Butler Wash section of the highway was built on its surveyed right-of-way with no further attention to the archaeology. Now, perhaps because the recorded sites were all described as small and marginal artifact scatters and were presumed to have been entirely obliterated by the highway construction, the site records were either never filed or were removed from both state and BLM site files and master locational maps. In the absence of an extant report, we all have assumed that over the years that the Butler Wash portion of the highway for some reason hadn't been surveyed at all, that the highway had just been built through there until we found the original site forms squirreled away in the university's archives. The extant records are limited to those forms. There are no known photographs, site sketches, or locational topo plots. Fortunately, the forms named the project, the Butler Wash locality, and gave approximate, though sometimes somewhat slightly miscopied, I think, locational information in reference to the surveyor's station numbers, which are perpetuated in the grass cap right-of-way markers along the highway at the present time. So we can find those locations pretty well. The site descriptions are extremely minimalist, usually one sentence, usually actually one clause. All describe very small artifact scatters, some with vague reference to ashy sediments, and none mentions a single noteworthy feature. And we spent several weeks of intensive field work along the Butler Wash Highway corridor, armed with those site forms and with low altitude pre-construction stereoscopic aerial photographs. And we were able to identify all but one of the site locations with moderate to high confidence. And the results are somewhat disturbing. Most of the sites are still partly extant and recognizable, and vastly larger and more complex than indicated on the site forms. Several extend well beyond the right-of-way fence on one or both sides of the highway. A full-on unit pueblo with clear rubble mound, pit structure depression, and substantial midden obviously recognizable through the windshield of passing cars. Half you people have probably seen this. Coming out of the road cut in Comb Ridge heading toward Blanding, as soon as you come around the big curve, there's a unit pueblo between the fence and the highway that was apparently not worthy of receiving a site form at all. It was not even mentioned. A series of substantial habitation sites had occupied high sediment ridges that extend into the valley from the foot of the Comb Ridge monoclinal dip slope overlooking the valley bottom. The highway had chopped deeply through every one of those ridges, taking the guts out of every one of those sites. They contain recognizable, what's left of them contain recognizable components ranging from Basketmaker 3 through Pueblo 3, but they're dominated by what are clearly the remnants of late Basketmaker 3 pit house hamlets. Taken together with a truly impressive Great Kiva depression that's a few hundred yards to the east across the wash that was recorded by Sarah Nelson in her University of Denver survey a few years later in 1976, these various sites together clearly form up into a fairly nice little Basketmaker community centered on probably the most impressive Basketmaker 3 Great Kiva in southeast Utah. Thank God the Great Kiva was not along the road corridor. It probably would have been recorded as a lithic scatter. It's hard to understand how these guys who surveyed the highway corridor could have suffered so severely from the failure to see the forest from the trees, but, well, we can only guess that they were overwhelmed with what appeared to be a near continuous scatter of archaeological surface evidence and chose to deal with it by defining their survey corridor very tightly, possibly restricting their attention to only the 50-foot or so wide projected pavement prism rather than the full 400-foot right-of-way corridor or the full extent of the road cuts that were going to be made in the highway construction, and identifying as sites, quotes, individual little artifact concentrations that were in fact actually just little hotspot clusters in much more extensive sites. The resulting archaeological data set completely failed to reflect the archaeological record that's there. The community of habitation sites, suggesting instead a landscape of small, minimal artifact clusters of minimal importance. This resulted in the construction of a highway through the heart of an important Basketmaker community whose very existence remained unrecognized by archaeologists and land stewards for 4 decades. That community is a significant element in the cultural history of the Comb Ridge and surrounding northern San Juan region, and was very nearly erased without trace and recognition as a result of that inadequate survey. The morals and lessons of this survey are so obvious that there's no need really to recite them. There are clear and important implications regarding the potential consequences granting survey contracts to low-bid archaeological contracting firms whose experience out on the Great American Flatlands gives them woefully inadequate preparation to realistically budget and conduct competent inventory in the densely complex archaeological landscapes of the Four Corners region. The panicked and desperate efforts of these low-bid contractors, driven by pressure from business suits, I'm not gonna get off on a free form. The panicked and desperate efforts of these low-bid contractors, driven by pressure from business school suits and air-conditioned offices to remain within inadequate budgets at the expense of adequate archaeological performance. It's the subject of extensive lore and grousing discussion among the veterans of the area who understand the real complexities and costs of doing responsible archaeological work in the region, and who rarely bother to bid on many of these contracts, knowing they have no shot at it, that they can't bid in the low-bid environment. I close with a rhetorical question and a suggested answer. When is poor archaeological survey worse than no survey at all? I submit that it's worse than no survey when it fails to adequately identify and document the surface remains that are actually out there, while diverting attention from the area by creating the illusion that the area has been adequately surveyed. The consequences can be both near-term impact from destructive development and continuing downstream neglect of and damage to the surviving elements resulting from the mistaken assumption by researchers and land stewards that the area has been adequately inventoried. Thank you.